This is Bloomberg Surveillance Early Edition. I'm Kaylee Lyons with Matt Miller in New York and Danny Berger in London. Anna Edwards is off today. For a generation of alienated techies, crypto's all-for-one ethos was its biggest draw. But today's Big Take shows how that same ethos is posing what may be the biggest threat yet to its survival. Panic is spreading through a market that has gone through several major downdrafts in its very short life. Joining us now is Glen Goodman, eToro cryptocurrency consultant and the author of The Crypto Trader. Glen, great to speak with you today. You think that this crypto crash is just part of a broader story. What is that story?
Really, that's the thing, is that usually I'm looking pretty closely at specifically crypto-related indicators, crypto prices. But over the last few months, I've been looking more and more at the NASDAQ in particular, but the US markets in general. Because frankly, the correlation between the two, between the crypto markets and even the S&P, has become very, very close. But as I say, particularly NASDAQ and tech stocks. And I think this is partly because during the big crypto boom last year, we had this situation, of course, where more and more institutional investors were getting involved. Before that, okay, years ago, Bitcoin was a kind of hobbyist's thing, and then lots of retail traders got in, and then finally, the big or big-ish institutions arrived in 2020 and 2021, and they see it differently from the Bitcoin purists. The Bitcoin purists, of course, believe in the story of Bitcoin as the currency of the future. Some people believe that it's even going to be the next global reserve currency. But the institutional people don't necessarily believe that. They were in it for speculative reasons in many cases. And so as a risk-on asset, when they start getting worried about the economy, particularly the US economy, then they start selling. And so if you look at the ups and downs of the NASDAQ and you look at the ups and downs of Bitcoin, yes, the Bitcoin and crypto ups and downs are more exaggerated, but they're still usually in the same direction.
I wonder what you think about retail investors that just got involved for FOMO reasons, right? I mean, the initial Bitcoin purists were very libertarian, didn't want to see any kind of regulation, thought this was a great way to, in a sense, fight the state. But the people who got on board, the Wall Street bets kind of crowd, if you will, they were just in it for the money as well.
Yeah, it was really frustrating to go through that because, with my eToro hat on, I'm talking about the big institutional investors, but with my writer of the book, The Crypto Trader hat on, I had a lot of readers writing to me and reading my book during the boom and then writing to me and saying, we're getting in now, we're getting in more now, we're getting in more now. And, if you look at my Twitter feed, you'd see that I was constantly cautioning people because I did most of my buying personally in around July, August 2020 as the market was just starting to take off in a big way. Bitcoin was still only around 10,000 at that time. And I did most of my selling, as I told my followers, around about $45,000, $50,000. And actually, that's useful to remember because don't forget that we're still about, thank you, we're still about double where we were when I started buying. That was only about 2 years ago. So, Bitcoin isn't doing that badly if you look at it over a 2-year horizon. But anyway, back to those retail traders, painful because they were all getting in far too late. And I was just telling people to be cautious, but they won't be cautious because they get caught up in the whole hype of it all,
So follow Glen Goodman on Twitter is the takeaway I'm hearing from this. So I do wonder, I love this comparison you draw to the dot-com bubble because we did see a lot of investment going into blockchain, any sort of crypto-related project. If we do enter a crypto winter sort of period, what long-term effect will that have on the industry if that investment dries up?
Well, what I would say is it's been extremely positive that the investment was there in the first place. Because if you think about it, we're talking about extremely risky, small tech startup projects in most cases with cryptocurrencies. And in normal times, if venture capitalists were looking at projects like those, they'd be extremely skeptical, and rightly so. But the fact is that because everybody got so excited and were just buying up anything during the crypto boom, just like the dot-com boom, loads of projects get invested in. Some of them, frankly, don't deserve to be invested in, but a lot of decent little fledgling projects that otherwise wouldn't have got that funding because people would have been too skeptical. They did get that funding, and that works its way through the system even during a crypto winter or a dot-com bust, and then you get the leaders of the future emerging thanks to that investment.
Glenn, thanks so much for joining us. Great to get your take on this. Glen Goodman is eToro's cryptocurrency consultant, and of course, he's the author of The Crypto Trader as well.